Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another favourite inks comparison video, and this is my Penultimate Dave favourite purple inks comparison number 1. So I think with that, let's swap up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the description, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM. And it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the colour of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me. When I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over, I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here and I will rinse the nib off several times and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. Now, the first ink here on this video is Waterman, and it is Tender Purple. And this is actually quite a nice ink, although it's an ink that I just do not use a lot, and I probably should use it more. So I think let's do an ink swatch here. And you can see here that this is quite a nice purple ink here, and we'll do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib. And this is Waterman. See if I can get it all on one line. Waterman, Tender Purple, just about. But that is quite a nice purple ink. I'd say it's a typical purple, and maybe that's why I don't like it as much. I typically like the more darker purples more recently, and maybe that's why I've had this ink for about, I think it's about 7 years now, and I'm just looking at the bottle, I'm still about 3/4 of ink in that bottle. So it's an ink that I don't use as much as perhaps I should do. The ink that I do use the most though is Diamine Majestic Purple, and this is more of a, I want to say more of a really dark purple, maybe more of a blurple in that sense, but it's one that I do like and I gravitate towards all the time. And I've gone through, I want to say, probably 5-6 bottles of this ink, so I typically do like it. So we'll do an ink swatch here, and I think you can see already it's got a nice darker purple, a little bit more of a magenta like sort of hue to it as well. So we'll do a second pass over the top half, and then you'll be able to see the difference with a broad or a wet nib or a narrow or a dry nib there. So this is Diamine, Majestic, Purple. But this is quite a nice dark coloured ink in the writing sample, whereas maybe Waterman Tender Purple is a little bit more on, I'd say, maybe not the lighter side, but it's lighter than Diamine Majestic Purple. The next ink here is Diamine Bilberry, and I know this is quite a favourite of a lot of you that watch these ink videos. I know you've told me before. And I would also say that these purple inks, some of them will have a bit of sheen to them. And I can probably show you here, like Diamine Bilberry, you can see the sheen around the rim of that bottle there. That's quite a lot of gold sheen. So, and you will see it also sometimes on Diamine Majestic Purple as well. So we'll do an ink swatch here. But this is more of a purple blue or blue purple. I'd say it typically is more of a blurple, more on the blue side. It is quite a viscous ink, so we'll do a second pass over the top half, and hopefully you might see a bit of sheen there, but you'll see maybe a difference between a wet or broad and a dry or a narrow writing nib. Maybe not so much in this one because it is quite viscousy anyway. So this is Diamine Bilberry. But that is a nice sort of blurple ink, and I'm just listing it here as a purple. It is a little bit more on the bluer side though, I would say, but it is quite a nice colour ink. Another one that is a favourite of mine is this one, and it is KWZ, and it is Gummiberry. And this I have used a lot. And I've gone through, I want to say, I've gone through at least, I think, 1 if not 2 bottles. I think I'm on my 3rd bottle now of this ink. It is rather nice. So we'll do an ink swatch here. And I have to say that in terms of purple inks, the majority of the time I am tending towards the Diamine Majestic Purple, and then also the KWZ Gummiberry. So we'll do a second pass over the top half there. Show the difference between a wet or a broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib. And we'll try and do a writing sample now. So this is KWZ Gummiberry. But that is quite a nice purple ink. One thing to mention about KWZ inks is that the newer bottles in the last 4 or 5 years have that they have an agent, an anti-mold agent in them, which gives off a little bit of a vanilla smell. So if you don't like vanilla, you might not be interested in the KWZ inks. Personally, I like vanilla, the smell of vanilla, and it doesn't bother me, but I know sometimes it does bother others. The next purple ink that I've actually been using a lot lately is Venvstas, and it's Vinaccia. So we'll do an ink swatch. Now, this really depends on your definition of purple. Some people will say that this is more of a purple colour. Some will say it's a little bit more of a lilac or mauvish colour. I will do a second pass over the top half because it is quite a dry ink, I find. and that will just show the difference between a wet or a broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is Venvstas Vinaccia, which it is an Italian ink, and it is an ink that I've been liking a little bit more recently as well. I think I've gone through about a quarter of a bottle of that. I might need to think about getting a second bottle at some point in the near future. The last ink here is Diamine Grape. So we'll do an ink swatch. And again, this is more of a darker purple. I do find this ink to be quite viscousy, and you can see that there. Even though it's showing to be quite dry here towards the bottom. Let's see if I can get a little bit more ink on the ink swatch. There you go. So you'll see a difference hopefully now between a wet or broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is Diamine, and it is Grape. But I do typically find that this is more of a drier ink. So I have actually gone through about half a bottle of this, but it is, I have to put it in a very wet writing nibs, because I do find, for some reason for me, I do find it a little bit more on the dry side. So I think let's now take a look at these inks now that they have dried. So the first ink here is Waterman Tender Purple, and this, I have to say, is a quite a nice purple ink, although it's just one that I haven't gravitated towards a lot more recently. Can you see the difference between a wet or broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib? And I'll show you up close, but yes, you can definitely see a little bit of difference there. Is there some shading going on? There's a little bit of shading, but not a huge amount. Is there sheen going on? It wants to sheen around this area, and I have seen Waterman Tender Purple sheen before. So it is a sheening purple ink, but it's not maybe a massively sheening purple ink, I would say. The next ink here is Diamine Majestic Purple. Again, can you see the difference between a wet or a broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib? You definitely can. There is a huge contrast difference there between the two. Is there any shading going on? There's a little bit of shading in that pulled area, but not a huge amount. Can you see sheen? And yes, you can around the edges here. There is a nice bit of sheen there as well. And the writing sample, you can see a little bit of sheen around the edges of the word purple there, but you will find that it will sheen, but it's not a massively sheening ink. It will sheen, I think, a little bit more though than Waterman Tender Purple though. The next ink is Diamine Bilberry, and this is more of a blurple ink, but I did include this in this video because it is a bit of a mix of a blue and a purple. Can you see any difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry and a narrow writing nib? Yeah, you can see a little bit of difference, but not as much as maybe Diamine Majestic Purple. Can you see any shading in that pulled area? I'd say it's really difficult to see because there is a huge amount of gold sheen there. So it is very difficult to see that shading going on. And just look at that writing sample that is glistening there on camera. That is beautiful. So if you want a purple or a blurple coloured ink with some gold sheen, then definitely check out Diamine Bilberry. The next ink, which is a favourite of mine, is KWZ Gummiberry, and this, I would say, similar to Diamine Majestic Purple, that these are what I would consider more purple inks. A very dark purple. Now, can you see the difference between a wet or broad, or a dry or narrow writing nib? I did put a little bit more wet on here because it was getting quite dry, but you can see in the middle part here that definitely you can see the difference. Now, is there shading going on? Yes, you can definitely see some shading here in the pulled area. And then is there sheen? You can definitely see some sheen around the edges here. The writing sample, though, I would say I'm not really seeing any sheen off camera. And I typically say that KWZ Gummiberry, I don't think I've recorded much sheen in writing samples in the past. So for me, if you're after a non-sheening purple ink, then this definitely is one to get. You can see it's got a lot more shading than Diamine Majestic Purple. Diamine Majestic Purple is almost a really dark purple in a wet nib or a broad nib, but KWZ Gummiberry is a little bit more on the lighter side. The next thing here is Venvstas and it's Vinaccia. Can you see the difference between a wet or broad or dry or a narrow writing nib? Definitely, there's a huge difference there. So this is one that you can really see the difference on. Is there shading? I'm not really seeing much shading in that pulled area. It's pretty much all or nothing. And is there any sheen? I would say no. There's no sheen to that, and I don't think I've seen any sheen in writing samples either. So, but it's a nice purple ink. It's not a purple that I would associate necessarily with purple. In a wet nib, it comes out very dark, very similar to Diamine Majestic Purple, but it's definitely a purple ink. The last ink here is Diamine Grape. Now, can you see the difference between a wet or broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. There is quite a huge difference there. Can you see any shading? It's difficult to see the shading in the pulled area because it really has a lot of sheen, and again it has gold sheen. So if you want a purple ink that has a lot of sheen, and you should be able to see it there on that writing sample a little bit as well. So Diamine Grape is a very nice sheening purple ink where it will sheen gold. Very similar to Diamine Bilberry, but Bilberry is more of a blur pool. So there you have it. That's my favourite purple inks comparison #1 video. If there are any of these inks that you like, do let me know in the comments below. Likewise, if there are any other inks that you would like for me to check out, then do let me know in the comments below. So that's my favourite purple inks comparison #1 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.